Our guest today is the Commissioner for the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. She was appointed by Mayor Emanuel 17 months ago. Prior to her appointment, she was General Counsel for the department. Our guest today has implemented a new taxi ordinance which has taken tremendous strides in improving Chicago's taxi industry to become safer, cleaner, and more accessible. Ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, Rosemary Krimbel. Commissioner? All right, have fun up here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you to the City Club for inviting me to speak today. And thank you for the introduction. I'm going to add a little bit to my introduction because more than 2/3 of my career has been in the private sector. I've owned 2 businesses, both of which I started from scratch and sold successfully. And prior to working for the City of Chicago, I was with the law firm of Schiff Hardin, where I defended businesses. I did environmental and complex litigation. So I understand business and I know the language of business. I've also spent the last 13 years with the City of Chicago. So I also know the language of City Hall. And it's a very different language, and I think you all recognize that. So I sort of think of myself as not only bilingual, but a translator in much of what I do. Because of my business background and my government service, the mayor chose me and tasked me with reforming business licensing and his #1 priority, which is to get City Hall out of the way of small businesses. So I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. And exactly what does it do? It touches every single business in the City of Chicago. It touches every single public passenger vehicle in the City of Chicago. And often to many people's surprise, it touches every cable television unit in the City of Chicago. Our mission as a department is to ensure a fair and vibrant marketplace for both businesses and consumers. As many of you may remember or may know, back in 2009, the Department of Business Affairs and the Department of Consumer Services merged, and that's what created this department. So we support small and large businesses through our licensing function, and we also protect consumers from bad businesses, or what I like to say, good businesses that do bad things. We also regulate the public vehicle industry, that's taxis mostly, and we regulate and oversee cable franchise agreements in the City of Chicago. Under Mayor Emanuel, he asked us to analyze, update, and reform, and take a hard look at how we regulate and how we license, and every single thing that we did. Well, as a consequence, we've done a lot in the last 17 months. So I'm going to talk about the mayor's first top priority, and then I'm going to talk about each of these areas. His #1 priority was to reform business licensing in the City of Chicago, to change the culture of City Hall, and to change Chicago by doing so. City Council has often been viewed, and maybe by some people in this room even, as an obstacle, something that businesses had to overcome. But my team, and a lot of them are here, and I have a phenomenal team. I really do. I'm very proud of the people I work with. But my team, with the mayor's support, are working hard to change that image, to get City Hall out of the way, and to make it a partner for businesses. We reformed how we license businesses. becoming more business-friendly, and helping good businesses start and survive. We've streamlined things, and we're changing our culture within the department and how we're viewed. So what does this mean for business? Well, first of all, it means there are fewer license categories for businesses to navigate. I'm going to now turn to what I like to call the mayor's favorite slide. There we go. When we took over 17 months ago, there were 117 different license types for businesses in the city of Chicago. We cut that number by 60%. We reduced the number of licenses from 117 down to 49, which just happens to be one less than everybody else. Just happened. BACP licenses approximately 80,000 businesses. Now, taking 117 license types over 80,000 businesses, it was a difficult chore. But what we found we were able to easily do is look at the types of licenses, look at the things that the various businesses needed as far as regulation, and peel back a lot of the redundancies, a lot of the things that, this is how we've always done it, pulled a lot of that back. Today, we issue 80% of our licenses within one day, 24 hours, many of them online. The 20% that take a little longer are the kinds of license types that you'd want us as government to take a little longer before we license. Liquor licenses, retail food. I don't think anyone in the room would want us to issue those licenses in one day. You'd want us to take a look at that. So let me walk you through how we made it simpler. We broke licenses into 3 groups, major groups. The first, which is Tier 1, the bulk of our licenses. These are the licenses that issue in one day. The limited business license. This is a basic registration. We looked at licensing and said, why do we even license people? Why don't we just let it be a free-for-all? Well, if you looked at it, I did a little historical research, and I went all the way back to the agora in the Greek marketplace. And there's actually a good reason why government licenses businesses. Number 1, we need to know who to tax. That's important, so we need to know who owns the business. And number 2, as a public safety function, we need to know, who do we call? The main, water main broke in front of this building, or there's a fire here. Who do we call on this block? Who do we call to tell them that we need you to come in, we need you to make something? So when you look at it that way, yes, we need to license everybody, and the bulk of our licenses are the limited business license, and that's all it really is a registration. It gives us the information we need as government to govern. The second tier is the regulated business license. Now, that has a few more requirements. Those are specific license types and businesses that we need a little more information from, and we're a little more concerned maybe about. They may be because of where they're located, like a home occupation license, we still have that, or maybe because of where they operate, peddler licenses, we need a little more information about that, or maybe how they affect a consumer, home repair licenses. That's a little bit more regulated. Want to know a little bit more about people who are walking into your home to sell you new windows. And then our third tier is the specialty license. This is our most restrictive license, and by that, it still is going to issue in less than 90 days. Tobacco, liquor, public place of amusement. Those are theaters and nightclubs. Things we need to be a little bit more restrictive about, location restrictions, activity restrictions, a little bit more information. So by doing it this way, we were able to go from 117 down to 49. We also, while we did this, looked at those licenses now that remained. The filling station license. I'm going to mention that because I think I have 2 tables full here of people who are interested in filling stations. The filling station license used to be 85% about benzene and gasoline. Well, it's 2012. There are a lot of other ways to fill your tank than with gasoline. We updated that filling station license, and now we have CNG stations in Chicago, and more coming. We have electrical recharge stations in Chicago. These are all transportation options which would have been difficult to license before we did license reform, just because nobody thought about it 80 years ago when that license was written. The other thing that we looked at was multiple licensing. Now, I know that there are a number of businesses here and parties that represent businesses, the Restaurant Association, the Retail Merchants Association. We looked at businesses that had multiple licenses. They had 3, 4, 5, 6 licenses. And we said, why? Why do we need you to have that many licenses? As a simple example, a restaurant, and one of the businesses I used to own was a restaurant, and when I had a restaurant, I had a cookbook. Now that cookbook was a real loss leader. It didn't make any money at all. At all. But what it did do is people bought it, it put it home on their coffee table or the bookshelf or wherever, and when they saw it, or when people came to their house and they saw it, they thought about my restaurant. So it was a good piece of advertising, but it didn't make any money. Under the old licensing, in Chicago, if you had a restaurant, you had to buy a retail food license for your restaurant. And if you had a cookbook, you had to pay another $250 for a limited business license. You don't have to do that anymore because it doesn't make sense. That's really not the business you're in. And these items are already loss leaders for your business. They're already costs that are sunk. You know, I don't have to add to it by making you buy another license. I already know what I need to know. So those were the things that we did to make licensing and operating a business in Chicago better. So now, in addition to just streamlining licensing, making it better, making it simpler, the mayor also said, well, what else can you do with licensing? Well, we can expand a few categories. We can make things a little better. We have a peddler license. We can create a produce merchant. Peddlers couldn't do produce. So we created a produce merchant category in our peddling license, and what that includes and allows is fresh fruits and vegetables to be served from carts on the public way. That's a brand new concept. We never allowed that before. But we put a little hook on it. We allow you to make money and put yourself a produce cart on Chicago and State or in a high traffic area and make some money if you agree at the same time to put a produce cart in an underserved area, an area where they don't have fresh fruits and vegetables regularly, in an area where there are children who have never actually eaten a fresh vegetable. And I am proud to say we now have 20 of these out there, 10 in underserved areas and 10 in high traffic areas. The other thing that we looked at, mobile food, you may have heard about it. It's been in the paper recently. We always had a mobile food license, and it was a mobile food dispenser. You had to have your food wrapped, you had to have it packaged, you had to have it connected to a commissary where the food was prepared, but you couldn't cook on board. Well, we looked out there, there's a lot of trucks out there that are cooking on board. So what can we do about this? We want food trucks, we want them out there, we want to provide this industry with a legal venue. So we expanded our mobile food category to include mobile food preparers. So these 117 mobile food dispensers, some of whom would like to cook on board, can now do so. They'll have to meet a few health requirements. I will say as an aside, I did suggest we just hang a sign on the outside that said eat at your own risk, but nobody really liked that. So the health department does have to sign off on the food trucks. So, and we also provided, because we have a bit of a parking issue in the city of Chicago, that we would provide free locations or stops for the food trucks to park in. And the food truck industry was like, oh yeah, where are you gonna stick them? Well, we just proposed about 20 of them, and they were like, whoa, that's not a bad place. We could be there, and they don't have to pay for parking. So we accommodated that new industry. We also created a restaurant startup program. This is to get more restaurants out there, get them up quick, so that they don't have to wait. Used to take about 30 days to get a restaurant off the ground and get it licensed. We've reduced that to 16 days through our restaurant startup program. We've also improved our inspection process, letting people know what we're doing when we come out to inspect you, to license you, so you know what's going to happen. Since June, 103 new restaurants have opened up in the city of Chicago going through this process. Future plans. So I'm not done yet. I have a rather demanding boss. You may have seen him, but he's not only demanding, he's a bit impatient. So there's more to do, and we're going to start doing it. 3 things that are on the horizon. Our emerging business permit. This is not a license at all. This is a permit. And that's an important distinction, because a permit can be pulled at any time. It's a little bit different than a license. But the concept for the emerging business permit is we have new innovative businesses coming to Chicago, and they don't maybe fit into a license category. And we don't want them to operate illegally. So when they get a ticket, then they have to call me and they have to say, oh, I got a ticket and I'm trying to get licensed. And I'm like, I know you are, I'll non-suit the ticket. I don't want to do that. I can give you a permit. Particularly if we're having a hard time licensing you. And one of the best examples is in the past, we all sort of went through the pain of the shared kitchen license. This was a license, this was a whole new concept, the shared kitchen, and we didn't know what to do. So we created a new license type. We'd had 116 before then, and that was our 117th. But we really didn't need to. Today, a shared kitchen gets a retail food license, just like a restaurant. We didn't have to create a new category for them. If the emerging business permit concept had been around, we could have just given a permit, operate for a year, up to a year, no more than that, but work out your kinks. As a former business owner, I know, you think you know what you're going to do, and then after you're doing it for a while, it changes. This allows them to do that. So, and it's a very innovative idea, and no other city in the United States has it. So it puts us on the map, and it allows us to bring new types of businesses to Chicago, businesses that didn't exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The Small Business Center. This is going to provide, you're going to love this when it comes. This is going to provide concierge service to small business. We're going to be able to walk you through, you're going to have one point of contact, you're going to have one person who will walk you all the way through everything, and you'll be able to have answers to your questions. You need documents, you need copies, call that person. Concierge service, Small Business Center. It will also be a one-stop shop. No longer will you need to go up to the 9th floor to get sign permits. Mike, you don't mind that so much, do you? No. Thank you, you're welcome. Before, you needed a public way use permit to hang your sign on your business because it hung over the public way. And yes, you have to pay for using the public way to make money. So you had to pay for that public way use permit. You also needed a sign permit from the Department of Buildings. So you came to my department, you got a public way use permit, which you couldn't really get until you got your sign permit, so then you had to go up to the buildings department, then you had to get your sign permit, and then they would say, don't forget, go downstairs again and get yourself a public way use permit. Okay, that's kind of dumb. Let's do it all in one place, the one-stop shop. So, sign permits, driveway permits, all those little miscellaneous permits that you do need to operate your business will all be at a one-stop shop. So that's coming down the road. Now, the other part of licensing, which really goes hand in hand with it, is enforcement. And again, I know many of you have dealt with our enforcement division. Well, we started to look at that, and we wanted to change that culture as well. We don't want our investigators going in to your business and writing you tickets because you couldn't figure out how to follow our regulations. That's not your fault. You didn't cross a T, you didn't dot an I, and you $200 ticket, bye-bye. No, that's not right. It's not business friendly. What we really want to look at are businesses that are a real problem. We can go after them. We can go after them because they're the businesses that cause confusion in the marketplace. They're the businesses that are undercutting your good business because they're not following the rules. We're going to go after them. So we're focusing more now on bad actors in the business marketplace. So we created two things. Number one, our flagged business list. This was brand new. This started in May. And again, it's a very innovative new concept. One of the things that we have in City Hall are computers, and we never really used them that much. We have an amazing amount of data, an amazing amount of information. People FOIA it from us, they send us Freedom of Information Acts all the time. So maybe we should start looking at it and using it. And that's what the flagged business list is. We created, and I want to thank some of my partners here, Mike Merchant from the Department of Buildings, Gabe Klein from the Department of Transportation, Streets and Sand, and Fire, Police, Health. Oh, I wish Dr. Shukar was here, because Health's one of my biggest customers in this flagged business list. We look through all the violations written by all the departments. We work right across all the departments, not just my department. All the regulatory departments. And we cull through the computer with a little program, looking for what I call frequent flyers. I'm not sure why that was funny, but it is. What they are, what we're looking for, is any business that has 2 adjudicated violations. Not just tickets, but adjudicated violations. That means they've either pled liable, they've been found liable, they're liable twice in 1 year. And we isolate those businesses. But we don't just do that. We then also look at all the complaints. And we have a little bot that runs through all the computers, and we look at the complaints that come in on our complaint system at the city to Buildings Department, Streets and Sand, Health, Fire. And we say, what are people saying about this business? What are they complaining about? Are they complaining? Oh, maybe he had 2 adjudicated violations, but nobody cares. Okay, fine. But now he's got 2 adjudicated violations, he's on our list, and oh my God, look what people are saying about him. They are complaining about this, or they're complaining about that. Now I have a data-supported business that's bad. Or as I like to say, a good business that's doing bad things. We put them on the flagged business list. We send them a letter, and we say, you've been flagged, and this is not good. You're going to see us more often. A fire goes out every month. Streets and Sand, Health, and we're going to work with you. And if you can go a whole year without getting a violation, you get off the list. It's sort of a good thing. Now, I license 80,000 businesses in the city of Chicago. There are 37 on this list. It's not a lot. I think that's pretty good. But data sharing, data mining, these are all things the city never did before, and they're all things that benefit business. Consumer protection. Now, a lot of people don't understand why in the world you're the small business person, right? You deal with small businesses. Like, what's that got to do with consumers? Like everything, okay? Because consumers are your customers. And if consumers aren't happy, you shouldn't be happy. They bring a complaint to the city, and the first thing we do is send somebody out to check it out. You know, when you screwed somebody out of a 50-cent or a $1 item, you're gonna get like $300 or $400 worth of tickets because my guys are gonna comb through your store. That's not smart for businesses. But the other thing, what consumers do, they tell us where the problems are. So we find consumer complaint, this guy's selling unstamped cigarettes. Well, I got 2 gas stations across the street from each other. One guy's selling cigarettes for $10 a pack or $12 a pack, whatever they are, and he's a good gas station. Gas station across the street, everybody's using him. He's making a lot more money. You know why? He's selling cigarettes for $7 a pack. You know why? Because he's getting them from Indiana and he's trucking them in. I'm going after that guy. Because I want the playing field for all businesses to be level. And consumers really are our eyes and our ears out there. They tell us what's going on. Their complaints, we read every one, and they tell us quite a bit. More than 48% of the tickets that we write, this is my enforcement division, are for outdated merchandise and overcharges at the register. That's over 48%. It's half. Outdated merchandise, that's baby formula that expired 6 months ago. Overcharge, that's, I bought this item, it said it was going to be $1.99. It's price marked $1.99. He charged me $4 at the register. That's half of our tickets that come from consumers. So they're a very valuable part. And I'll tell you, a lot of our businesses, when we sit them down, particularly when they're on the flagged business list, or we talk with them, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. And we work with you, and we get you more information, and we help you to see where you're falling down, if you're falling down. We also do a lot of education, Consumer Bill of Rights. We have a number of areas where we have Consumer Bill of Rights. Private booting, that's booting on a private parking lot. Oh, by the way, if you leave our store and go across the street, we're going to boot you. That's private booting. That happens to people. And I will be perfectly honest with you. Probably half of the consumer complaints we get, they say, I only left for 2 minutes. Yeah, well, that's good enough. I'm sorry. Okay, there was a sign posted. Now, if there was not a sign posted, you got a big problem. But if there's a sign posted and they even left for a minute to go across the street and get that Starbucks and come back, and you booted them, okay, you gave them clear warning. But you're also, not only did you boot them, you put on their windshield a Consumer Bill of Rights, telling them what their rights are and why they got booted. We also do Consumer Bill of Rights for home repair, where people come into your home, letting you know you have 3 days and what that 3rd day is. Immigration assistance providers, try to head off as much immigration fraud as we can. We make them provide a Bill of Rights to all of their consumers, telling them what they can and cannot do. Non-professional tax preparers, we do a Bill of Rights. Come in, this is mainly focused in areas where we have refund anticipation loans. We have people who we're not talking about lawyers or accountants or professionals here. We're talking about non-professionals. This is the guy who just opens up a shop and says, I'll do your taxes and I'll pay you right now your money, and it's maybe a 30% interest rate. If you're lucky, it's usually more than that. So that type of thing. So we go and we look at all of that. So we get about 2,000 consumer complaints every year. Now, we also work with business organizations, as many of you know. So we share the information that we get. And they then know. And they can go back to their businesses or their representatives and say, hey, did you know we have this problem? So it's a good thing across the board. And now, speaking of consumers, here's your biggie, taxis, public vehicles. Another area we completely redid. And I am very proud to say you can see the difference on the street. You really can. Our goal was safer, cleaner, and more accessible vehicles in the taxi industry. I'm very proud to have representatives here from Access Living and Paratransit to support us, because we are making a real difference with our new taxi ordinance. As businesses, you spend a lot of money to get people to come to Chicago. I spoke last month at the hotel symposium where I sat there and listened for 2 hours while people did presentations about millions of dollars they are spending all over the globe to get people to come to Chicago because we're so terrific. And what's the first thing you see when you get here? The taxi driver. That's not really good. So that needed to be fixed. That needed to be fixed for business. That needed to be fixed. Just needed to be fixed. So BACP's job is to ensure safe, reliable taxis and accessible taxis. We license roughly 10,000 public passenger vehicles in Chicago. Then by public passenger vehicles, the bulk of that is taxis. About 7,000 are taxis. The other 3,000 are liveries, ambulances, Metacars, trolleys. Thank you very much for being here, Fran. Sightseeing boats. I think Holly's here, yeah. So if it holds people and it moves, we license it in the public passenger vehicle. We also work in conjunction with CDOT and with aviation to ensure that we have a supply of safe transportation vehicles in the city of Chicago. We also review and license up to 16,000 public chauffeurs. Those are the people who drive those vehicles. We also do 19,500 physical inspections of the vehicles. Every taxi comes in twice a year for a physical inspection, gets thrown up on a lift and looked at. Brakes tested, meter tested. That's a lot. So again, we looked at that industry and we looked at that regulation. And again, the rules and regs for that regulation were old. They've been around for a really, really long time. For instance, the old ordinance, and stop me if I get a little too weedy, but I know I have a lot of taxi people here. The old ordinance had an incentive built into it for Ford Crown Victorias, old police cars, police interceptors. These are the big behemoths that you're starting to see disappear. The old ordinance gave that particular vehicle, which was called a long wheelbase Ford Crown Vic, you get kind of handy with the lingo after a while, an extra year to be on the road and extensions for time. They could be on the road even longer if they keep passing inspections. Not anymore, because the bulk of them came from New York City. New York City had a 3-year taxi rule. You're off the road in 3 years. In Chicago, it was 4. A lot of the independent operators in the city of Chicago were buying used taxis in New York when they came out of service and putting them in service in Chicago. All right, you spent millions of dollars to get somebody here, and I'm going to throw them in an old beat-up New York cab. I don't think so. We changed that. You can no longer put a used car into service with 150,000 miles on it. You also no longer have an incentive to do so. There are no more extensions, except for one area, wheelchair accessible. You put a wheelchair-accessible vehicle into service in the city of Chicago, you could keep it on forever. I don't care. As long as it keeps passing inspections and it's wheelchair accessible, fine by me. I got London cabs that are all wheelchair accessible. They've been on the road 20 years. I don't have a problem with that. I expect this incentive because the cost of that vehicle, that's your big investment as a taxi company. You only get 4 years to get the return on your investment if you put on a non-wheelchair accessible cab. Now you'll get 5 years if it's an alternative fuel vehicle, which gives you a 25% increase in your return on investment. But if you put on a wheelchair accessible, your return on investment goes right through the roof. So it's a very good new ordinance to put in good incentives. Not an incentive to put a beat up old car on, but an incentive to put a clean, new alternative fuel and wheelchair accessible. And that's what regulation should do. As a consequence, I have had Atlanta, Georgia reach out to me. Houston, Texas has reached out to me. London, England reached out to me and said, like, how in the world have you done this? That's amazing. I mean, this incentive idea, instead of mandates, wow. And they go, well, is it working? Yeah, it is working. And there's our proof. This is just alternative fuel vehicles. For years, we've been trying to get the taxi industry, with all sorts of gimmicks and mandates, to put on alternative fuel vehicles. That little point there where it kind of starts going straight up, that's when we passed the new taxi ordinance. The language that business speaks is money. It's different than the language that City Hall speaks. You now can make a lot more money if you put on wheelchair accessible and alternative fuel vehicles. So that's a good thing. And I wish I had a chart for wheelchair accessible because we've practically doubled that. And I have a bet with somebody in City Hall that in 5 years, more than half of the fleet will be wheelchair accessible, if not more. Because why wouldn't you put on a wheelchair accessible cab? You would be crazy if you were in the taxi industry not to. Safety. Okay, we have something new this year also on our taxis. It's the safety bumper sticker. We're very proud of this. Not only do you need newer cars, which by the way increases your public safety out there, because you're driving a newer car, a cleaner car, your driver's going to take better care of it. But we also added this bumper sticker, and we redesigned how we license the chauffeurs. We track, I get 12,000 complaints a year, that's 1,000 a month, about taxis, about taxi drivers, about taxi vehicles. Well, the vehicle complaints are kind of going down, which is good. But since I put this sticker on, my driving complaints have gone up, as, by the way, my compliments have. Okay, it says compliments or concerns. The message I want to get across to people is someone in my department reads every single one of those. They're not long. You know, I mean, there are 12,000 of them, but they're not that long. And we find out who's driving that car. We track not only what customers are saying about a driver, we also now get monthly Secretary of State reports. We used to only get that once a year, and it was brought to us by the cab driver. No chance of fraud there. Now we get it electronically. Again, we have computers in government, and we're using them. So we get this monthly from the Secretary of State. Also, we work with the police department. And I have to tell you, no offense to Mike or Gabe, but I love the police department the best. They are so good. They give us weekly reports. Every single arrest of a cab driver, we give them, here's our cab drivers. They run it through their computer and they send us back. So I can find out if a guy who's up to be licensed next week got arrested for a DUI last week. I wouldn't have known that for a year under the old system. So police give me regular electronic reports. Finance also gives me monthly reports on red light tickets. So now I know if they're blowing through red lights or not. And consumers, again, they're our eyes and our ears, and they tell us a lot. We also changed how we train drivers. They always had to go through a 2-week course. And that course was held at community college here downtown, Harold Washington College. We moved it down to Olive Harvey. One reason is because that's our transportation hub, community college. But the really big reason, it has an outdoor driving track. We never made them actually get behind a wheel before we licensed them. Now they have on-the-road training. They have simulators down there. They have a track. The old classwork and training for taxi drivers, they had to learn a lot about geography. Where's Peshtigo Court? Where's Financial Place? You know what? If you want to go there, you better just tell your taxi driver, because I'm not teaching them that stuff anymore. I'm teaching him safety. I'm teaching him customer service. I'm teaching him how to say, good morning, thank you. I'm teaching him or her, and we do have quite a few female cab drivers, that customer service translates to higher tips, to better income, and we're getting feedback. It's working. I got in a cab, and I'm not making this up. Every time I tell this story, people think I'm making it up because I'm the commissioner who regulates taxis, but I'm really not. I got into a taxi about 3 weeks ago, this female driver, and got in the back seat. She didn't know who I was. Most people still think I'm Norma. They don't know. So she says to me, "To where do I have the pleasure of taking you today?" I thought, oh my God, I'm in the Twilight Zone. Something happened. But that's what we're teaching them to say now. So hopefully you'll get one of our newer cab drivers and our trained cab drivers who know a little bit more about safety, customer service, and small business skills, how to develop their own business, and how to answer dispatched calls. So I feel every time I look out the window, City Hall, that we're moving in the right direction with the public vehicle and with taxis. So now I saved the best for last, cable. A lot of people don't even know that we do cable television, but we do. We regulate cable companies because cable companies have an obligation to the public to provide local community access television to everybody. They have to provide public service and service the public in return for having the right to their franchise, and we regulate that. And I'm proud to say that we partnered with the public, and I'm proud to see CAN TV is here. Barbara, thank you for coming. We worked together, CAN TV in the city, on the last franchise agreement, and we've been together ever since. But we did quite a bit to update this. This area, again, last had been updated in 1982 when cable television came to the city of Chicago. That's the ordinance that we had to work with. It didn't know anything about digital. That word didn't exist in there. HD it didn't know about. And it had a cable commission, which was paid $80,000 a year, to do basically everything that we do, but to do it publicly. So we got rid of that, and now we do what we do publicly. We have quarterly meetings where the public can come, and all of the cable TV providers come, and we have discussions about issues. And so that's a good thing. But the important or additional thing that we did in working on cable regulation is we assured the future of local access cable programming. Now, most of you probably don't watch local access cable, or maybe you've seen a clip of it on The Daily Show if you've seen it at all. But there's some good stuff on local access cable, but more importantly, there are people in the world, and I know this will boggle some minds, but there are people in the world who do not have a smartphone, do not have a computer, do not have access to anything in the outside world other than through their television. And it's local access cable, where they see their alderman, where they see information about what's happening, where they learn about events, where they learn about their rights and their community, And that has to be secure and safe. And the new ordinance, I think we did that. We made it secure and safe. I know we did that because Barbara's smiling. So that is an area which is kind of obscure, kind of hyper-technical, but something that we do and something that we're also just as proud of as we are of our business licensing, our taxi regulation, and of my entire team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it'll be my early opportunity to ask you questions. I don't have to wait until the budget hearings.
Oh, am I in trouble now?
We have some questions? I'm afraid I'm not going to be as reverent as Paul Green, but I'll try my best. Okay. I have not had an opportunity to review these questions, so we're just going to start.
Me either.
The first question I have to give aldermanic prerogative is from Alderman Tim Cullerton of the 38th Ward.
This is going to be a budget hearing.
He asks, would you, by the way, he's a member. Thank you, Alderman Cullerton. Could you please require a meter on all cars to count the number, cabs, Alderman, you have to write clear. Meter on all cabs to count the number, frequency, and length of all honks.
Honks?
Of all blowing of horns.
I don't think so. But starting in January 1st of 2013, every single taxi will have GPS and will have that GPS connected to the meter. So we'll know where all the taxis are. And we're meeting now with smartphone and app developers and our own data do it in the city of Chicago to try to provide a window, just like you saw Plow Tracker. Well, soon you'll be able to see Taxi Tracker. So that's down the road, another thing in the future. But honking, I can't really mechanically do that, no, because it's not connected. The horn's not connected to the taxometer. If it had been, I would have, though.
I'm going to exercise a little prerogative. As a follow-up question, we've been discussing a lot about taxi cabs, and I know one of the issues that's been in the forefront, at least in the cab drivers' minds, is fare increases. Would you care to comment on your view on whether a fare increase is warranted, and if so, under what circumstances?
No comment, no. Actually, there has been a lot about that, and the position that I take, it's not how much the cab drivers make, it is how much we pay as consumers. And that's what we have to look at. We have looked at it last year, across the board, city to city, peer cities, we're smack dab in the middle. As to whether or not there's going to be any changes in that, I leave that to the future and I have no comment. But right now, I feel we're good.
All right, this is from Chester Kropodlowski, who's also a member. He's affiliated with the Lakeview Citizens Council, and his question is, taxis, limos, and petacycles take over the Wrigley Field area and Wrigley Field streets on Cubs game and concert days. Who do they work with to help regulate the situation? Your alderman.
Absolutely, I like that answer. But that said, first of all, that's a traffic issue, and there's a lot of traffic aides and police that regulate that area for traffic. Pedicabs, we're meeting with pedicab owners, we're working with the stakeholders, and we're trying to see what we can do with pedicabs to get them to be regulated as well.
Okay, here's one from Joyce Saxon, who's a member of the Board of Governors. And she's asking a question that I have on an issue that I see quite a bit. Too many cabbies still talk on their phones during the entire trip. Should we report them?
Yes, you should absolutely report that. But I will give you a tip. You want to get them off the phone? Ask them about themselves. They love to talk. They'll talk to you just as easily as they'll talk to the people on that cell phone, and you'll be amazed what you'll find out about our cab drivers. Some of them have PhDs and engineering degrees from other countries, and they're just driving a cab. Some of them are going to school. So engage your cab driver, talk to them. That'll get them off the phone.
All right, this is from Anita Ponder of Saferth and Shaw. When will the Small Business Center be available, and how is a small business defined? And finally, identify the services to be provided by the center.
Almost all businesses are small. There's no definition. I've read a lot on the area. 97% of businesses are small businesses. And certainly in the city of Chicago, that's true. We should see it in 2013, depending on how my budget hearing goes. But it is part of the plans for 2013. And what it will be is, a single point of contact. Someone who will not only be there for you to reach out to, but who will be reaching out to you and to communities, and will be able, like I, to translate between City Hall speak and business speak.
All right, this is going to be the last question because we're approaching the 1:30 time and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. This is from Gus Zagrafopoulos, who is not a member, but I'm going to ask your question anyway. But as you can see, it's the last question rather than the first. What is the expected wait for a taxi for an able-bodied person versus an accessible taxi for a consumer with a disability? And if the wait time exceeds whatever those standards are, whom do we call?
You call 311 and you complain. Under the rules and regulations, 30 minutes. You should have a cab within 30 minutes of your call. And I will say that it doesn't matter where you are standing, and it doesn't matter if you are disabled or not. Getting a taxi dispatched is difficult. And it's something that we're looking at, we're working on. GPS will make a very big difference starting in January. We'll know where they are. And I think we're going to be very surprised.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. It's an honor to serve with you.